It was a gray morning in the small town. The rain fell softly, as if the sky shared the sadness of its inhabitants. In the oldest house in the place, there lived an old woman named Doña Clara, known to all for her kindness and wisdom. She was sitting in her favorite rocking chair, looking out the window, reflecting on the years she had lived. Next to her, a series of letters yellowed by time, witnesses of a youthful love that never faded. Doña Clara had once loved, but the war took her fiancé, leaving her with a broken heart and an uncertain future. Over the years, she learned to live with her loneliness, finding solace in books and flowers in her garden. However, that morning, something was different. A newly arrived letter broke the harmony of the old ones, a notification reminding her that her time in this world was coming to an end. The old woman took the letter with trembling hands and read the words that confirmed her worst fear. Her health was rapidly declining. The doctors had done their best, but there was nothing more they could do. Doña Clara sighed deeply, accepting her fate with the dignity that had always characterized her. She knew she had to prepare to say goodbye to her beloved home. In the days that followed, Doña Clara began to put her affairs in order. She rummaged through old photographs, cherished memories, and wrote letters to the few relatives she had left. Every object she touched was a fragment of her life, a story that would soon become an echo of the past. But there was something that still weighed on her soul. The garden she loved so much would be abandoned, and with it, her beloved roses. Doña Clara's roses were famous in her town. Of all the colors and fragrances, they were a reflection of her resilient and passionate spirit. Every morning, without fail, the old woman took care of them, speaking to them sweetly, as if they could understand every word. To her, those flowers were more than just plants. They were friends, companions in a life full of ups and downs. One day, while carefully pruning a white rose, Doña Clara noticed a figure at the door of her garden. It was a young man named Gabriel, a shy boy who had recently arrived in town. With eyes full of curiosity, Gabriel watched the old woman work. Doña Clara, with a smile, invited him in and showed him the secrets of her garden. Gabriel became a frequent visitor, learning everything Doña Clara was willing to teach him. Over time, an unexpected friendship blossomed between them, uniting two lonely souls through the beauty of roses. Doña Clara saw in Gabriel the spark of youth, and the hope that her legacy would continue after her departure. However, Doña Clara's health continued to deteriorate, and with each passing day it became more apparent that her time was coming to an end. Gabriel, aware of the situation, promised to take care of the garden when she could no longer do so. The old woman, with tears in her eyes, handed him her pruning shears, a symbol of her trust and affection. Gabriel's promise was sincere, but life sometimes has other plans. Shortly after Doña Clara's death, a job opportunity took Gabriel away from town. Heartbroken, he set out in hopes of returning one day and fulfilling his promise. The garden, meanwhile, began to feel the absence of its caretaker. The roses, which once bloomed proudly, began to wither. Weeds invaded the space, and the vibrant colors faded into a sea of unkempt green. The villagers, busy with their own lives, hardly noticed the change. Doña Clara's garden, once a symbol of beauty and perseverance, became a distant memory. Gabriel, now in the city, was stuck in the rut of work and responsibilities. Although he often thought of the garden and his beloved mentor, the demands of everyday life took him further and further away from his promise. The letters he sent to the people became less frequent, and his connection with his people weakened. One day, he received a letter from one of the neighbors, informing him of the sad state of the garden. Gabriel felt a twinge of guilt and sadness, but he didn't know how to handle the situation from so far away. He promised himself that he would find a way back, but as the months passed, that promise turned into an empty whisper. Years later, Gabriel returned. The town had changed, and Doña Clara's garden was unrecognizable. Where once there were roses of all colors, now there were only thorns and desolation. Gabriel walked through the garden, each step a reminder of his broken promise. Determined to make amends, Gabriel began to work in the garden. Day after day, he battled the weeds and dead plants, trying to bring it back to the life it once had. But lost time is not easily recovered, and the roses resisted blooming as before. Neighbors watched skeptically. Some scoffed at his efforts, others ignored him entirely. Gabriel felt alone in his struggle, but he wasn't willing to give up. He remembered Dona Clara's words, her laughter, her wisdom, and that gave him the strength to continue. Over time, some roses began to bloom, shy and fragile. They were not as splendid as the ones Dona Clara had cultivated, but they were a beginning. Gabriel clung to the hope that, with patience and dedication, the garden would once again be the oasis of beauty it once was. Despite Gabriel's efforts, the garden never regained its former glory. The roses grew, yes, but they lacked the brightness and vitality that Dona Clara had infused into them. Gabriel realized that some things, once lost, cannot be restored. The young man, now a mature man, reflected on his life and the choices he had made. He lamented broken promises and missed opportunities. It was no longer his home, and the garden was a constant reminder of his failure. Eventually, Gabriel decided to leave the village, taking with him only the memories and lessons learned. As he walked away, he looked back one last time, knowing that he had done his best, but also acknowledging that some wounds are too deep to heal, teaching. The story of Dona Clara and Gabriel teaches us that life is full of promises and good intentions, but we can't always keep them. Sometimes circumstances get the better of us, and we must learn to forgive ourselves for our failures. True wisdom lies in accepting our limitations and finding peace in the fact that we did the best we could with what we had at the time.